So this Gnostic psychology of inner peace, overcoming fear and the inner struggle. Okay, so back to, and for those that are playing along at home, not present here with us now, let's be aware of ourselves again, or continue for those that haven't stopped, which is great, to be aware of ourselves. Sometimes in doing this practice, I imagine, for instance, what I'm looking at is producing a light that's shining back and illuminating myself. Like the subject and the object are on the periphery of a giant sphere. And in that, we're bringing all our attention and awareness into this collective consciousness in this moment. Because half of the talk that we're here to receive is what's being given, what's being said. And the other half is how we take it in and how we receive. And that makes it unique to each of us. We'll each hopefully take away something. And we sometimes, I don't think tonight, but who knows, we go over a lot of things. Gnosis being a direct mystical intuitive knowledge, or the knowledge really of all creation in some sense, the big G knowledge. And I was going to talk about that in relation to the G word, which we'll talk about that in a moment when we start to talk about the R word. Two very important words that have negative connotations in some sense. We'll get to that in a moment. But that Gnosis can be completely beyond comprehension of the normal intellectual mind in an abstract reality. But a lot has been said intellectually, or a lot of information can be put together on it. And it is not your objective or anyone's objective really to feel like I need to get it all or grasp it all. If we can just walk away with one thing that touches us or transforms the way that we think or feel about something, I would say that that's a good day. It's a good class. If we could just think about that, think for a moment, the thought experiment. If tomorrow you were going to get up and go to work and learn something very valuable and important and actually integrate it into your consciousness, into your very being, something, just one thing that transforms you and changes you, that would be a good day, right? And then the next day, you're able to do it again and again and again. That would be amazing, wouldn't it? Think of the transformation that would take place in a lifetime. That's really what Gnosis is about. It's the transformation of a life from moment to moment, experience to experience. But the importance of doing that really necessitates consciousness, presence. Now, it doesn't have to be exactly as we explained it with this division of attention, but generally when it takes place and you feel that knowing, it's usually because our consciousness is our attention's divided that way. We don't perceive it that way, but that's provides the space between what we're doing and how we're perceiving what we're doing for that light to illuminate, and we know. And this is one of the things that's been very difficult about Gnosticism throughout time, because the early Gnostics understood this. When we say early Gnostics, we would say pre-Christian, Christian time period. That's where we think of the Gnostics. But we would say any teaching that has this center of gravity and profound wisdom and knowledge and consciousness is a Gnostic teaching. And really at the heart of every teaching, there is this core. And it's really about not a teaching or a dogma. It's about an apprehension of knowledge, of understanding that allows one to be transformed. And the teachings that are formed around that are what we call, with the R word, religion. And I know for a lot of people, religion has a negative connotation. In the Gnostic teachings, for us, it doesn't, because we look at it from the source of what its purpose is. Religion comes from the Latin word religare. And the roots of those words, lig, like in ligament, to unite, and re, again. Religare, or religion, is to reunite. Reunite the creation with the creator, the knowing, the knower with the knowledge. To reunite the essence with its source. And we would say on this topic, in relationship to fear and the inner struggle, or whatever the title was, I can't remember. That sounds ridiculous, but that and search for inner peace is, we would say unequivocally that in reality there cannot be an inner peace without really knowing and being known. You know, one of the things about, you made the reference to being married, and one of the things about marriage and the ritual of marriage and the coming together, and I remember from our wedding and many weddings that we've been a part of, that there's something about being seen, being known, and that when you unite with someone, you're saying, I will be known by you. And that's actually the same root, Gnosis, that in the very beginning, in the Bible, they talk about knowing, to be known, like that idea of carnal knowledge, physical knowledge, intimate knowledge. That is one of the profound experiences of the human being. But in this, we're looking at it even from a larger scale knowing. That we, as this point in space, can be connected to the source of all space and elements, and not just in an abstract way, but in a very intimate, profound way. Now, we were talking about previously about the difficulty in Gnosis and having that intuitive knowledge, because that can't really be communicated to another individual. It can be done through induction or inspiration, but it has to be, again, converted into intuition in that individual. It's not like I can say, here's my Gnosis, take it, you've got it. But from beings that are living to the best of their ability, this process of seeking knowledge and acquiring it intimately, relatively, it moves towards this big reality, consciousness, and that we do it little by little. And we can't, again, communicate that to the others, which is what was very difficult for the church way back when, was, wait a minute, we can't be sure of what you're knowing or what you're doing. So we're a little afraid about that. And so you can see fear plays a part in all this. But here's the truth. In the acquisition of any knowledge, in the awakening of the consciousness, of it receiving a new light, it implies that we are doing something we have not known before. And there will always be some form of fear or uncertainty on that. And that's just like in the world, Gnosticism's been a little shunned because, and through time, you know, maybe not right now, but as a heresy, which the root heresy, the root for that word is free choice. And free choice can be a little scary. And that's really why we don't tend to think freely, because down inside we have some fear. Like freedom's a little scary.
Well, even so often in Gnosis, I mean, I know for myself, entering into the teachings, and I wanted to know how to do it right as soon as possible. How do I meditate right? How do I, what is it to be a good Gnostic? I wanted to know how to do it right. So there was that sort of an underlying insecurity driving that desire to get it right. And intuition isn't like that. It's and Gnosis isn't like that. It's not a knowledge driven from that anxiety of not knowing. And so much knowledge seeking in this world and in people is driven from an anxiety about not knowing. And intuition blossoms from when we can hold that state of not knowing. That's when intuition becomes possible, when we become okay with not knowing. And so much of how we pursue knowledge, so-called knowledge or information, is actually completely antithetical to producing intuition, which is actual knowing. So, and it's that fear. And even we can come into Gnosis with that fear, that anxiety, that desire to know, which is so, we call it natural. It's not really natural for the consciousness, but it's natural for the ego. It's natural for fear to feel that way. And so it's common, maybe common is a better word. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And on that topic, in the big sense, people looking at other people, that scares people, because for me to admit that somebody else knows something that I don't know makes me question myself and what I know. And so ignorance is really the big obstacle in this world that we're living in. And as we were talking before about this, ignorance is bad enough inside of ourselves. But when we understand, for instance, bear with me, I'm going to say a few things you might not like to hear, but that's you're going to have to get used to that. For instance, you've heard the term that guns don't kill people, people do, right? I would go and say that wars don't kill people, people do. Religions don't produce atrocities, people do. And all the terrible things that are happening in this planet, it's all done by people. People without consciousness of what they're doing. Or we would say ignorance, which means really to not know something. So if we're acting from fear, or we're acting from some form of desire, or even searching for information in that, we're actually acting without consciousness, which means we don't know what it is that we're actually doing. We might have a belief, we might have a drive, we might have a concern, but really what we're after in Gnosis is consciousness, or truth. So that R word, religion, for many of us has a terrible taste, because we see all the things that have been done in the name of a religion. But that again, for those that really know or knew, that were conscious of truth that transform, there was not a need to prove or destroy or dispel something from somebody else. Gnosis is always an intimate expression of one's own consciousness. In time, beings come together to share, to support in that acquisition of consciousness and knowledge, and follow beings that have verified certain things. But it should not lead to a dogma that overcomes others. It should inspire others to find their own Gnosis. I like to say that an inspired work should inspire inspiration. A great work of art, a great, beautiful landscape isn't going to get me to feel like, oh, I need to go plant some trees. It might, I need to build a big Gothic cathedral. No. If we have that level of consciousness, that should produce an inspiration relative to your capacities and purpose to fulfill. Now, that word purpose again, I find really important, because if we don't know as an individual our place or purpose, then we really have no other hope but for fear from moment to moment in our lives. And religion, true religion, not religious forms or dogmas, but true religion, the element that allows us to connect ourselves, the individual, the structure with the source, then can communicate to us what our purpose and place in this is. And there's no need to feel ashamed or to judge or compare or to imitate. Now, here's a question. You could say a joke, but a joke's sort of a question, isn't it? How many atoms does it take to make a light? Make a light. Wait, let me first put that with another question. Because in the topic, there was the word psychology, right? Psychological
Gnostic
teachings.
psychology.
Gnostic psychology.
Peace.
Right. Yes.
I know, it's like I made the title. He's teaching the class. He can't remember the title now because I made it
so good that I'm like, okay. But so how many psychologists does it take, this is tied together, to change a light bulb? It's a good question, right? The answer is one. But the light bulb has to really want to change. Okay. Now let's go back to the first question. How many atoms does it take to make light? And this brings us to a bigger question that's plaguing materialistic science at this time. Because science would tell you that an atom doesn't have consciousness. Well, then the question I would ask is, well, does 2 atoms have a consciousness? 3, 4? If everything in this world is made up of atoms, how many atoms does it take to make light or consciousness? Which becomes the problem of science, is that consciousness, what is consciousness? And some start to even question consciousness at all, as if it's some illusion, a byproduct of a material structure moving through time and space. That's sort of a Buddhist viewpoint, that this world is an illusion and that there is no self. There is no little r reality. But Gnosis brings about a different answer to this question. How many atoms does it take to make light? 1. Because every atom is a trio of energy, matter, and consciousness. Now, it's not a consciousness like you and I have, and I'll get to that. I'm going to hopefully take us there. But it's consciousness relative to what it is, an atom. And very interestingly, science will tell you, and the Buddha as well, that at the atomic, subatomic level, that atom is constantly vibrating or changing. And here's the kicker, that atom, it really wants to change, meaning it is fulfilling its purpose. Now, that atom of consciousness is not the same as our consciousness. It doesn't have all the capacities that we have, but what it does have is it knows its purpose and it's fulfilling it. And just like all of us together with our attention focused together, atoms fulfilling their purpose work together to form communities called molecules and cells. And those cells are a community of consciousness working towards a common goal. Their purposes are all united, and they form organs such as livers, spleens, brains, hearts. And a heart is a community of consciousness, a collective of consciousness, all fulfilling their purpose that then connects it to a higher purpose of being a heart. And in Gnosis, we speak about the heart very much, but not just the physical structure of a heart, because it has energy, it has matter, but it has consciousness. And all of that, the consciousness of the heart, the consciousness of the brain, all of these community collective consciousnesses form the consciousness of me or you. The difference is that we don't generally know what our purpose is, what our objective is. And because of that, we don't have peace. And that's part of the objective of creation itself, is for all of the consciousnesses, all of the parts of this creation are brought here so that we can find and fulfill our purpose. But until we do that, we have uncertainty. We have inquietudes, as it were. And the difficulty is that we look outside. Do you know what the purpose is? And really, I'm saying, what's my purpose? Could you tell me what my purpose is? Well, she could tell me what my purpose is. That doesn't count. That was a trick question for that. I don't even want to hear. I don't want to hear the answer to what you think my purpose is. But for each of us to find our purpose. Now here, where intuition really is key, where we can have a sense, a feeling, a knowing, and then the world may tell us something else. And we don't act because we want certainty. And this is something that's very interesting. Intuition or comprehension will allow us to know what it is I need to do, for instance, but it doesn't allow me the ability to know how to do it. We continually have a knowing, but with uncertainty. And that allows intuition to blossom into action, to will, to comprehension. But it's necessary for us to keep this division of attention and working with consciousness so that when I do what I think I need to do, I can always rectify what it is that I'm doing by receiving the information from the world. And again, we have to be conscious, because we can't say, oh, I'm bad, I messed up, I always do this. I'm no good, I'm alone, I'm afraid, or I'm in a world that I don't belong in, or I don't feel part of it. I don't feel part of this family. I don't feel part of, I don't know. And the reason is because we don't really know our place or our purpose. So we'll always feel relatively empty. But that is what, from a Gnostic point of view, creation is here for us to know and then fulfill or realize our purpose. And that takes time and space. So there's time and space for us to realize why we're here. And it's going to be unique to each of us. And that helps us to understand what we see here is, we call in Gnosis the two lines of life, or these two lines, where we have this first one that I showed you, which I related to religion, or religare, or reuniting, which is reuniting this atom of creation that knows its purpose and then connects with other atoms and other elements to form beings that somewhere along the line we get trapped or tricked or fall asleep in this horizontal line of material life. It's this material life that's made to help us to realize, because I believe, I think, I want, but now I have to enact or carry out. And I don't know how I'm going to do that. And learning the how, it provides the intuition. I get inspired to do. And as I do, I realize what it is I'm meant to do by how I do it. And that is how we become human beings, because Gnosis tells us something very interesting, that we are in human form, but we're not actually true human beings until we've realized that purpose inside of ourselves. It comes from the Sanskrit hu, which means spirit, and manas, mind. Hu manas, or human, is a spirit connected with a mind and realized within this world of matter. This realizing or knowing is this element. If we bring our consciousness to each moment, we can know ourselves, know our purpose in the big, but also in the moment. What's my purpose here? Like, my purpose might be to write the great American novel. But when I'm taking out the trash, my purpose actually is taking out the trash. Now, I could say I'm the great American novelist taking out the trash. And then I can grow a big head and say, oh, I shouldn't be taking out the trash or whatever else. But here's the thing. In consciousness, in that connection of myself, aware of what I'm doing and my purpose in that moment, the intuition could inspire me to write that knowledge, that novel. So all of the little purposes in my life will connect me with my greater purpose, but I have to have my awareness present. Now, one of the things that we talked about in relation to this quest for inner peace, which is very important, is that, classic answer, what do you wish for? I wish for world peace. That's
beautiful.
Beautiful. Right. That's a good person.
That is beautiful.
That is beautiful. But here's the thing. In reality, world peace will never be until all of the particles and the parts and the people awaken to their own inner peace. We have to fulfill that inside of us before the world will be that beautiful place. And we can only do it inside of ourselves, which is why Gnosis is so valuable. First, we have to do it inside of ourselves. And the way that we do that, fundamentally, is that we have to search for it daily. Two elements that I'm going to say, I think that's very important to remember. We need to provide time and space to practice, and we're going to do a practice tonight in relation to fear and inner peace. But we have to do that regularly. And I'm going to say something out there because we all struggle to find the time and the space to practice. But I'm going to say something, not that you have to do this, because it should never be a dogma. But I do think this is valuable for all of us to hear and to think about. A daily practice of meditation. We should be, when you think about how much time we devote to making a living, making dinner, taking out the trash, how many times a day do you take out the trash? A lot. There's a lot of stuff we dedicate our time to. Watching YouTube videos, playing with our children, all of these things. We need to devote a fair amount of time towards our own peace, our own inner peace and joy.
I can't tell. I have this new computer.
As if it's our purpose.
Right. Hang on a minute.
And so that being said, a minimum, not that we need to jump right into this, but I do think that if we're trying to find inner peace, and I hope that's why we're here, right? You thought I was just going to give it to you. There's the inner peace. I got it. I hope I have brought enough because a lot of people came. But if we want inner peace, we have to dedicate some time to that. And, about an hour to 2 hours a day is really a fair amount to work to cultivate, because we can't expect that peace to just be there when we need it in extremes or difficult times. So we need to dedicate some time to do that. Now, and it's not to be like, oh, well, I don't sit that much, bad me, I'm a bad person.
Mm-hmm. That's not peaceful.
That's not peaceful. There's a term that we use in Gnosis, the crystallization of the I, the self, that we call the ego. And we're not going to go into it too deeply, but that ego is fractioned into a whole bunch of thoughts, feelings, and ideas about oneself and about the world that are sort of consciousness without light in them. They're kind of trapped in the reality that this is the way this is the way that is, this is the way you should believe, this is what I should do, this is what I shouldn't do. We have a tendency to compare, we have a tendency to feel ashamed, we have a tendency to feel prideful, we have all these tendencies in the ego. And the thing is that Judith just mentioned, that these egos are moving through us continually, so that when we say, I am going to meditate, and we do it with a sense of self or I, and then we don't, and another one comes in and says, I'm bad, and then another one comes in and says, you should be better, and then look at this other person. All of those things, those egos are continually reproducing a reality that creates a disconnection from our real purpose, because it's a myriad of little purposes that don't have to do with reality, which is how I would change the word religion to reality, as an R, reality. And the G word, which I'm going to say it now, I haven't said it yet, God, which I know for many of us, it's a difficult, we have concepts and ideas about what that is. And so many things have been done in this name. But again, in ignorance, not necessarily evil, but sometimes ignorance with power. There's a lot of powerful individuals that are acting without absolute consciousness that seems to be very evil and difficult and terrible for this world. But let's try to remove those concepts around the way I think and feel about those words. But I'll change the G word to, and it's interesting, Gnosis is a G word. And also, if you've seen for instance, the Freemason symbol in the center is the G. We would say it's a G for Gnosis. You could say a G for God, or a G for geometry, which is the formation of creation, the creator. And that part of our purpose is always going to have to be to reconcile with where we came from. And so we need to know that, not just take it as an idea that that's bad because people have done bad things. And again, it's people that mess everything up. And it's not about them. It's about how I'm doing that inside myself when I act without consciousness. There's not right or wrong. There's conscious or unconscious. Things that move me closer to the source and things that move me further away from the source. Because I will never have inner peace outside of that source. Now, the beauty is that source has an intimate relation to every part of this creation. We are all children of this great abstract reality. So let's change the G and the R to the great reality. That's a term you can use. Maybe that doesn't hurt as much. And it's difficult because so much hatred has been happening in the name of the G word and the R word. But even more so is how I've transformed that inside of myself. And so that science and materialism says that there is no such thing. But I tell you, there are very few materialist scientists that on their deathbed aren't in terror and in fear because of not knowing what's there. And what Gnosis not only proposes, but teaches for us to comprehend and understand relative to where we are. And the more we go, the more we will comprehend and understand that there is nothing to fear in our death. Especially if there is nothing to fear in our life. So we work on this process of transition into the uncertainty, into the great unknown, by doing it from moment to moment in our lives. And we were being given the knowledge, the information to convert into Gnosis for us to know not only where we're going, but where we've come from. And that is a freedom that cannot be taken away. And why we see so many individuals in history that have been burnt at the stake as heretics, that have been tortured, but never lost their faith. Not faith in the sense of the word like, these things that have been done in faith, but faith, like a real trust in knowing that cannot be taken away. That's what Gnosis really has the ability to provide, but it cannot just be given to you. It's just used the same by doing the right thing, right? Not doing the wrong things. We have to do them with consciousness, and we have to do them consistently. Because what happens in the way that consciousness and intuition work, and I say this as an employer, I've had employees and people that I've worked with, that you could be 100% consistent, 100% effective at your job 75% of the time. And then you realize that actually that's not 100% consistency. And it's not even 75% consistency, because that means that the employer or the world never knows when you're going to do what you say you're going to do and when you don't. We need a consistency not built out of fear, but out of love and longing. We don't want to give because we have to. We give because we feel we've received so much, to have gratitude for all that we have in our lives, and not compare it to others, because comparison produces fear. Comparison's the thief of happiness. Just like I said, that inspiration and inspired works breeds inspiration for you to do not what somebody else has done, but to do what you are inspired to do. Inspiration is a key element in knowing your purpose, what inspires you, and then working to fulfill it. You may need to do a job for money or all sorts of things, but we can't always do the thing that we love, but I guarantee that we can find something to love inside the thing that we have to do. There is a powerful power that comes, powerful power, that's lame. There's a magnificent power that comes from transforming the chore of life, the things that we have to do, by choosing to do what we have to do. It's not semantics. For instance, and I'll do something simple, I have to take the trash out. Don't pick up the trash, stupid trash, and it doesn't fit in, and I'll get walking around and all this, and wow, it's just so wasteful, and all this blah, 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 blah. No, I have to take out the trash, so therefore I choose to take out the trash, to do it, to fulfill my purpose in that moment. And in that way, I employ will and I move myself forward in my consciousness. I'm conscious of what I'm doing. I'm present. Now we can apply that into everything that we have to do in our lives, because the difficulty in this world that we're finding, the pain and the suffering, and suicide rates are up, and depression rates are up, and drug use is up, and anxiety is up, and fear of, because we don't know what's going to happen. And I heard somebody talking or saying, like, the youth of today, and that's me, right? I'm part of, no? Okay, well, the youth of today, maybe some of you know some youths, feeling very dismayed and what's the word, like cheated in a sense, to be in a world that we're told has an expiration date, with the climate change and with these diseases that are here. It's like, I'm in a world that I didn't create, and I feel cheated. I feel that I don't belong here. It's not fair. But Gnosis gives us some invaluable information about this, that if we're here, if we're part of this, Gnosis goes beyond just this physical life. There's a reason for that. It's not just happenstance. When materialism will say it's all chance, Gnosis says that you need to recite chance. No, that was bad. that there is a purpose for you in every point of your existence. And so by choosing to fulfill your purpose in what it is that you're doing, you're going to start to cultivate this inner peace. So one, we're working, setting time aside for inner peace and joy, dedicated just to that, and not letting the mind corrupt it and say, I should be doing something else. I shouldn't be doing this. I'm not meditating good, or I'm not meditating enough. Just do what you can and do it 100%. Dedicate to that. Number two, try to find peace in the moments of your day continually. Realize, when I'm carrying out an action, am I doing it with peace? Am I doing it with willingness, which is the term I like to use for willpower, with willingness, to be willing to do what I'm doing. That is a powerful transformative tool, to be willing to do what it is that you have to do. And then maybe you make choices to do other things. But search for peace from moment to moment, and set aside time for peace, because otherwise you're not going to have it when you need it. Now, back to the relationship of the thing that's so terrible and difficult for us as people this time, feeling so disconnected and separated and isolated. The reality is that this consciousness, this soul of you, this essence, this being of who you are, that is identified with you in this body, in this room, in this life, and these have to do's, is eternal. And if we could connect with that, and through practices of inner peace, we can connect to that. We can feel it. We can know it. Now, in life, we may have uncertainty about it, but the more we feel it and know it and try to fulfill that, the more it's going to crystallize inside of us and create a magnetic center that allows us to bring peace and happiness into everything that we do in our life, in the world. And that is how we're going to bring about world peace. Now, the reality is this, the great reality. And in Buddhism, there's a term and a practice and in relation to trying to experience what is called this great reality. In Buddhism, it's called sunyata. And we might be like, yeah, I want some of that sunyata. I want some real reality, not just some of this cheap, phony reality that, I want some real reality. I want some great reality. I'm not just good reality. I want great reality. But actually, the precipice, the uncertainty facing this reality that I'm living and facing the great reality produces a terror and awe that is almost impassable, which means, and which is why in Buddhism, they practice extremely often and consistently preparing the mind so that they will be able to face that reality. That is a Gnostic path, is to prepare ourselves for the real truth by integrating all of the truths and the realities that I have accessible to me in a moment. And that is one of the elements that was talked about, and it's totally misunderstood in religious culture, is to have what is called the fear of God. And we think, or those are, I'm going to put the fear of God in there. These terms and these ideas of powerful ignorance. Because the fear of God, or the word fear, there's two that were used. There's many words in the Hebrew language. Pakad, which was a dread or a terror, similar to what I was talking about, facing the precipice of the true reality. And there's yirah, which is the reverence or the awe, because both of those things are true. Facing this great reality, this capacity of feeling myself as part of everything, produces an amazing awe and wonder that's indescribable. But that if I don't have some level of peace and connection inside of myself, knowing my place and purpose before the great reality, it's going to produce a terror that's indescribable. And the process of Gnostic teachings are initiatic in terms, meaning that we go through stages and steps of being initiated internally, not in an external form as much as internal initiations, confronting what we know and the uncertainty inside of ourselves and the world, to crystallize that value of faith or trust in action. And we go incrementally forward, so that we prepare ourselves for these big aha moments. And because of that, it's very important to have a group of people trying to do this, not just a group that says, yeah, you're wonderful, you're great, you're good, but that we, just like in a marriage, that we're reflected back to ourselves. We're, confronted, because it's the confrontation against what we know and what we think we know, what we think and what we actually do, what we intend and what our impact is, allows us to cultivate the values of trust, hope, consciousness. So you see, we're in the place that we need to be. And because the times are so extreme right now, it means that you and I have a lot of work to do, but the benefit is very great for us. These are times that have been talked about for millennia. And Gnosis acknowledges that these are very difficult times that we're going through, and we're on the precipice of more difficult times. But it gives the hope that through a teaching and a work, an inner work, is what takes us to an inner peace, so that our peace can be so great that it can consume a terror. that is so great. And we do that by understanding our place and purpose where we are. And unfortunately, though science may say, materialism may say they understand everything, but this physical reality is just minuscule compared to the great reality of what is actually taking place. And that Gnostics, beings, masters that live in those realities come to tell us, to inform us. And that's the most important part about being in a group that's working together, is that we have not only peers that are working, and not only those that below that are coming to know and we can help, but beings and masters that are ahead, that have verified, that have lived through difficulties and can guide us and help us. Now, fortunately, I mean, it's possible we can awaken enough consciousness and then go in and have those communications at night, and that's wonderful. But then we have to come back to this reality and see, is this really true? So we can get lost in the terror of our own mind at sometimes too. So very interestingly, there is a proverb that was interestingly, Proverb 1:7, that says, and Proverbs is a book all about wisdom and knowledge and acquiring deep, deep understanding. It says that the fear of the Lord, and again, by fear, I mean awe and reverence, by contemplating the immensity of reality and knowing my place and purpose in it. That reverence of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. And it begins by facing the things that terrify me inside of myself. And that this life, this world, just like inspiration breeds inspiration, terror incites terror inside of ourselves. And so as a people, we're terrified because we don't know our place and we don't know our purpose. And if all we have is this physical, material world that we see falling apart before us, that's scary. And people are, as I said, committing suicide and going through depressions, and because we don't feel connected to this. And the reason we don't feel connected is because we're not connected to our purpose, that this is not the only world in life that there is, that we're here because we need to be here to learn what it is we need to learn. That's not something aside. And so, oddly enough, in the book, the epistle, 2 Timothy, same verse, chapter 1, verse 7, as the proverb, for God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. So to feel in connection to that, it allows us, it prepares us. We're preparing ourselves daily to approach this great reality. By approaching the little realities inside of ourselves, preparing, working continually with inner peace, to feel connected to the whole, to feel a part of something greater, to feel a part of the whole instead of feeling apart from the whole. And that's the story. If I'm going to simplify and synthesize the Bible, as it were, in sense, what happened and what can happen, what happened is the immensity of the great reality that we were once a part of, we left. And through that, instead of being a part of the whole and feeling the bliss and the joy of that atom fulfilling its purpose, we were like a speck before the whole, apart from it, and feeling the immensity of that. And that reflects in the subconscious and unconscious of all of us. And so that when I go to take that trash out, to make it practical, when I go to take that trash out,
It is trash night.
Oh, when I go to take that trash out, I'm not just carrying the weight of that trash. I'm carrying the weight of all of my unconscious subconsciousness on me, in my hate and my anger, my depression, my frustration. I'm carrying much more. So what we need to find is, in the darkness, in those moments, there was an album by Pink Floyd long ago called Pipers at the Gates of Dawn. And it always makes me think of this relationship, that no matter how dark it is, we know that the dawn is coming. We would not be able to perceive anything in this creation if it wasn't for light. We may not perceive the light, but we perceive what the light shows. And we get identified with that, and we feel alone, and we feel afraid, and we feel overwhelmed because we feel separate from that. But that separativity is the illusion of the mind, or an unsound mind, to feel apart from the whole. So we're afraid, and we feel alone, and we feel the weight of our unconscious and subconsciousness. And so that this interaction that we're having, or this drive that we're taking, isn't just this moment. I'm carrying the weight of a bunch of pain. And the relationship of fear is intimately related to materialism. And that I need to find security in this world, in a world that at the atomic level is constantly changing, means I will never have peace, because I'm going to continually be transforming myself, trying to find security in a world that is crumbling continually. But we have the hope inside of us. We have the purpose inside of us to make use of this. And that's what Gnosis provides, first as an inspiration, and then trying to activate that, to turn, no matter how dark the situation feels, to turn and face the light. We can be surrounded by darkness, but we look for the light. We seek the light. Not outside of us, but inside of us. Which brings us back to the practice that I know we're still doing. Aware of what we're perceiving and what we're receiving. The objective and the object that we're looking at, and the subject, ourself, receiving it. The light, the great reality that's outside of us, and the relative reality, the relative truth that's inside of me, wanting to be known, wanting to be seen. And not seen by the people around me or by the world that's constantly changing and calling me to do different things, but by the source, or the light that is being projected through everything that I identify as difficulty, obstacle, pain. And instead of understanding that the light that I feel inside of me has an origin, and that the little r, religion, is the element, the bridge between me and this moment, and this great reality that exists infinitely throughout all eternity. So to feel ourselves as an idea that I'm eternal, yet I'm still identified with this world, will not produce any transformation. It's the consciousness of that eternal nature is what provides the term that was used in ancient Gnostic teachings was salvation. And that might be another word that we don't like to hear, but the salvation is through the knowledge, the comprehension, the consciousness that I have a purpose, and that I'm doing my best to fulfill that purpose. Not in relation to anybody else, but in relation to what I am here to do.
Absolute value.
Absolute value. And no matter how many other things we try to do in our world, if it's not in relation to and in connection with that purpose, we're always going to feel relatively insecure, unsecure, and unfulfilled. We might have gratification through desire, and then that's where those egos come in to fulfill through lust and pride and addictions and even through fear and through terror.
Distract.
Mm-hmm. But we have to use our consciousness to say, no, I'm going to seek this. And it has to be consistent. As I said, the 75% thing, that we have to be consistent, because I can have intuition and act. And in this great reality of all creation, when I receive the benefit of what I'm doing, if I'm not conscious, I don't know it. So I can believe in a heaven, I can believe in extraterrestrials, I can believe in past lives, but belief is not what saves. It's consciousness. To believe and to be conscious of something are totally different. A belief can be shaken by disbelief, can be disproven, can be skepticized. But consciousness, to know something, can never be taken away from you. Even if we forget it, it will not be taken away. Okay, so we're going to take a break and we're going to come back and do a practice. I'm going to leave this wonderful picture up for our practice. Okay, and then we'll have a little bit of time and for questions, and only for people I don't know. I'm only going to talk to people I don't know. We don't know, because there's a lot of you here, and I've already we've talked before, and we'll talk in the future, but there's some people here we may never see again, so it'd be a great opportunity to hear from them. And but no pressure. You don't have to speak, but let's take eight minutes. So and we'll be right back.
Whatever 35, whatever time zone you're in.
Oh, right. Different time zone. Right. Okay. Find it to be helpful to kind of give a little perspective in our consciousness. So first, just before we start the practice, just think of something that may have come up today or recently, a thought or a feeling or something you've heard, and not about the world, but more something inside yourself, a fear that's come up inside of you, a fear, an insecurity, or even a anger, something. An uncertainty. You know, let's say one of the things that I didn't say is, we've said before that we're in a pandemic, and that pandemic is actually a pandemic of negative emotions. That the Gnostic master Samael says that actually there is nothing more contagious than negative emotions, and those fear or aggression or anger or many different types, but that it's very easy to be infected, as it were, by somebody's negativity, and then produces negativity inside of ourselves. So let's be aware of some form of negativity, a negative thought, a negative feeling that you've had. We're not going to focus on that, but just so you don't have to think about it later. Let's just have it in your mind, something that came up, something you heard, and maybe you just went, ah. And then let's set that off to the side. We can look at this wonderful little picture.
Thank you, Oscar, for some of the images.
Incorporated them. That was very nice. Okay. Let's relax now. Let's forget that thought as well as all of the thoughts. And one of the key components to fulfilling what we talked about in the classes is class is the ability to let go. And in a world and at a time of so much activity, negativity, difficulty, difficulty, I wanted to say something that rhymed, but that it's very important for us to be able to notice and let go, notice and let go. And not as much outside, but really inside. That's sort of our psychological immune system. So in this moment, let us try to let go. Not by pushing away, but just letting go, noticing and letting go. And let's begin to breathe deeply, completely, meaning we exhale all of the air from our lungs. The greatest capacity our lungs have is when they're totally empty, like the mind. And then slowly inhale and fill them completely. And with the filling, let's imagine as if our whole body is filling with air and the lightness of air. We're floating up almost. Our head reaches up like a balloon tethered on our spine. We pause when our lungs are full, we relax, and we exhale and feel the weight of this material body and let it feel in our awareness like a weight of relaxation that just is pulled by gravity downward. But our constitution stays up as we inhale again. And each inhalation is an inspiration, an inspiriting, a lightness being filled and filling us up. And allow it as we fill up to even lift the corners of our mouths into a smile. And we exhale completely and feel the relaxation, the weight of this body. In each, the inhalation and then the enlightening and the exhalation and the relaxing are both pleasant and joyful, enjoyable. And in this way, we activate, we cultivate inner peace and joy. The great thing that we should take hope in is that if I have a part in this world, in this creation that seems so scary and terrible, not to be overwhelmed by it, because that means that I have a part to play in the changing. I have the power to change my perception, my reality. Not in fantasy, but through lived conscious interactions, willingness. Let's take 3 last deep breaths. Completely exhale, completely inhale, and completely exhale. And try to sit for a few moments in non-thinking, in mental silence. As if you're holding on to something very sacred, like a little child, like an infant. And it requires your attention. We wouldn't forget that we were holding a precious little child, especially someone that we loved and felt in awe of the care that it needs, and that we are going to do everything we can in this moment to provide it. That is our purpose, to hold this pure essence of life in our awareness, and not let a memory, a concern, a moment take us away. And if it does, gently but resolutely, we return our awareness without judging or feeling bad for losing our attention, but just softly, gently, again, returning to this precious light of being in our awareness. And now, without really thinking, allow your heart to feel a moment. It could be from your childhood, it could be from yesterday, but a moment. From your life, from a lived perception, moment of pure love or joy. It could be a feeling that you had watching a movie or being with someone you care about, a memory playing as a child, or if we need to, imagine that feeling for a moment. If we can't, if something doesn't come, we don't want to get caught in the trying to remember. It could have been in a conversation, a simple word said by someone, a parent, a child. And once we have that feeling, let us feel the feeling as if we're extracting it from the moment, and let all the thoughts and the memories and the images surrounding it go away, and we just hold on to that feeling. And we rest in that feeling, using our attention as if there is nothing else that exists but that feeling. And as we inhale and exhale, we breathe into and through that feeling. And by simply placing our attention on it and feeling it, it grows, it develops, it expands. Feel ourselves as if we're inside that feeling, resting. nestling, being nourished, being protected. But now, as there was nothing else but that feeling, we are inside of it. And there is nothing else in our awareness but this feeling that consumes us. And as we inhale, it grows. And with it, our awareness grows. And like we did subject and object, now this location is being filled by that feeling. But our attention's divided into the point of focus at the center of that feeling and the expanse or the periphery of that feeling growing and radiating beyond us. So at one time, we are both totally here and expanding to everywhere. And imagine, as we're feeling this feeling of warmth, of light, of love, of joy, we don't need to give it a name. It's just a feeling that we're experiencing. It expands and touches those around us. But our attention's still in the present here at the center, but the periphery is expanding and touching. And every thing that it touches, it changes. It relaxes. It inspires. It communicates to. And we as a group are allowing this feeling to communicate and interact with us, creating a collective consciousness of inner peace and hope and love, trust, faith. That in this feeling, which is what makes my life real, is the feelings that I have. In this feeling, I am okay. I am doing everything I can do to be connected to the creative source of this cosmos, of this one true love that connects us all. With our imagination and feeling this feeling, we can feel that we're immensely bigger than this body, than this mind. And connected, we are all. Raising the vibration and adding inner peace to this turbulent world, so much so that we don't even feel turbulence. We just feel joy, love, and hope. Because if we can feel this now, we can feel this always. It's not as if we created it and need to sustain it. We just need to remember it and turn our attention towards it, because it is. And in this, we commune with, we participate with And with our attention like this, as if reaching from outside of ourselves, let us then pick up that little fear, that feeling, and bring it into the center of this immense love. And let us feel the contrast. Let us feel the choice that we make 100 times a day to turn towards the darkness. But perceive that within the immensity of this great reality. And in conclusion, let's recite the sacred syllable Aum, feeling it through us, connecting first with all of us here, then the second time with all those we know and love, and thirdly with all those we don't know or don't love, without leaving or thinking or judging, just feeling.